You can absolutely travel, go on vacation and not spiral. You can be in an unpredictable food environment with unknown menus, unplanned meals, no real routine holding you together. You can just be a person and a human on a trip, right? Fully in it, not micromanaging or negotiating with yourself about anything. Hello, and welcome to another new episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped. I'm excited about today's episode. It's going to be a little bit of a personal one. I'm going to share a bit about my travels to Italy this past spring. And the reason I'm going to share is because I get so many questions about eating while traveling, about navigating emotional eating, just disordered eating patterns, right? Like so many of us have struggled with, these stressful relationships with food. And I have found that in so many conversations that I have with women, travel is such a big source of anxiety. So today I want to tell you my story. I'm going to talk about how it used to be for me. I'm going to talk about things that I've done to make it better for me. And really, this show is just going to be really targeted around one question, which is, can I actually ever enjoy food again? Right? Not manage it when I'm on vacation, not feel like I'm in a constant negotiation with myself while I'm away on vacation, but can I really actually enjoy it, like truly? And the answer is yes. And I want to show you what that looks like, not as a concept, not as some future thinking, but as a real, as a real example. I want to take you through some of these moments. So I hope you stick with me through today's episode. And if you're new to me, my name is Alana Kessler. I'm a registered functional dietitian, and I spent years just having food be, the loudest thing in my brain all the time. And, I'm someone now who's on the other side of that. I've guided thousands of women to the other side of that. And, I'm just happy to be sharing, especially this story with you today. So let's dive in. So, like I said, the first thing I want to talk about is what travel used to feel like for me, because on the outset, vacation sounds like relaxing, right? It sounds like relief. It's an escape away from the regular stresses of life. But, the ironic thing is that for me, and I think for a lot of women, vacation, when we're away from our routine, away from what is safe and regular, vacation can be one of the hardest food environments that there is, because at home, you have structure, you have your rhythms, you have your routines, you have the systems that you've built around eating that keep you feeling like you're good, you're on track. And travel, it completely dismantles all of that, right? There's different food, different menus. The menus are in different languages, different portions, right? You have no idea what the portions are going to look like. You have no idea whether there's going to be a huge bread basket there that you're going to have to think about, and you're going to have to decide what you're going to do and how you're going to eat in the moment, in real time. And oftentimes it's kind of public, right? There's other people around, other people watching. And so I felt that without this structure, I felt very exposed. And what it would look like for me from the outside is I would be somewhere like amazingly beautiful, right? I've been lucky to be able to travel to a lot of beautiful places. And, I wasn't there, right? I wasn't there. I was inside my own head. I was cataloging and thinking about what I ate that day. I was, running numbers all the time, wondering how I was going to manage eating and calories in my day. I was wondering if I could let myself order the thing that I actually really wanted, or if I should get, the safer, the good thing. And, and spend the rest of the meal wishing I could get the other thing because I'm watching everyone else eat it and I'm having FOMO, and, I'm feeling that energy rise up inside me. Some might call it a craving or a desire. And the thing that was even harder than sometimes these food decisions is realizing that I'd be sitting here with, people that I enjoyed being around and in an environment that I dreamed about going to, and mentally I was someone else entirely. And looking back now, I know that it wasn't about the food at all. The food took up a lot of my mental space, obviously, like, the mental math about it all. But really, what I was lacking was feeling secure, feeling safe, because I had learned somewhere deep in, my generational belief system that food was something that I needed to control in order to feel okay. And when that control wasn't available, right? Like traveling when the environment was unpredictable and, the bread was there in, uncontrollable amounts, and the portions were generous, and nobody was measuring anything. I wasn't able to measure. My nervous system didn't see that as joyous, as abundant, as free. My nervous system read that as a threat. The old version of travel for me was, there would be like a pre-travel rhythm, a pre-travel routine, and it wasn't good, right? Like before a trip, I would get extremely, extremely stressed, right? Like I would get extremely tight emotionally. My body would tense, and it wasn't always conscious, but I would always restrict, right? For like the days, the weeks before a trip, right? Like the reason why I would restrict was because I felt like I was building some sort of buffer. Like I needed my body to feel in this smaller place so that I had a buffer for in case I ate more going forward. And also I felt like being smaller going on vacation would make me feel better about myself, right? And so on the trip or on the vacation, I would swing, right? There would be a meal where I told myself that I was on vacation and that I was going to enjoy myself, and I would really mean it, right? But then something would tip me over the edge, right? I'd eat more than I'd planned, or dessert would arrive and the evening would completely shift because I hadn't planned that, right? And I'd lose the boundary of, whatever kind of schedule or whatever kind of rule that I'd set for myself that morning. And then what would happen was I'd be alone in my, in my hotel or in my room, and I would end up back in an old pattern. And, for those of you who've been listening to me for a while, for me, I struggled with, emotional overeating, binging, and then purging. And so on vacation, before I'd leave on vacation, I would try so hard to, to get myself to a place where that wouldn't happen. But, pre-healing, quote unquote, for me, this is what this would look like for me. Like I'd gone with the best intentions, but anything that disrupted the certainty or the perfectness of what I thought it would look like, I'd end up back in that spiral, and I'd feel deeply ashamed. I'd feel more disconnected from my trip, and it would it was painful. It was truly painful. And that was what vacation eating was for me a lot of the time. It was like this swing back and forth, which was, this is going to be good. I could do this. And then it was like, oh no, I messed up. And then it was this spiral back into this thing. And, it was exhausting for me. And it wasn't just physically exhausting, but it was exhausting in that like particular way that comes from like fighting with yourself. So then the next day I would be even more strict with myself on vacation. I would try to tighten the reins more on my eating. And, I'd just be in that old cycle on vacation. And largely, I wasn't feeling happy in my body and my clothing. I was more obsessed and had intrusive thoughts about food. And the vacation was sort of just like me there in these places, kind of just like sleepwalking through it a little bit. And that's, I think, sometimes the most painful part is when you can't really embody and feel the full breadth of something that you're excited to go to, because the behavior and the food noise and the body noise and all of that stuff is just taking up so much space in your brain. And so that was how it was for me a lot. And then I'd come home and of course I'd immediately get back on the I'm going to get back in control bandwagon, right? Looking for another plan, setting myself up with like, I got to do 5 workouts a week. I'm going to only eat A, B, C, and D for, this week. And it would just be this really aggressive, restrictive plan, right? As if the vacation was actually something that I needed to recover from rather than something that had given me that peace that I was looking for, right? Or had given me that recovery. I started to blame myself a lot. Like I would be like, oh, I can't even like relax on vacation. I can't even enjoy a meal in these amazing cities in the world. And I would think that there was something really wrong with me, and I would feel sad for myself, and I would feel scared for myself. Like, am I ever going to not have this be my experience? But it ultimately, there is nothing wrong with me. I was just stuck right in this old pattern, using food to navigate uncertainty, disruption, unpredictability, which back then was a threat to me. Now it's something that I embrace and can really manage well and enjoy, actually, and even invite into my life. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that experience and how it is for me now. But before we move on to that, I just want to remind you that if you're enjoying the podcast, you can watch it on YouTube. You can subscribe there. We'd love that. And if you are enjoying this episode, other episodes, you feel like this episode could help someone, you can share the episode with someone, and you can rate us 5 stars and leave us a review as well if that feels authentic to you, because that really helps us grow. So thank you so much. You've built a good life. From the outside, it looks like you have it all together. You eat clean, you work hard, you take care of everyone. But there's this one area that still feels impossible to master, and that is food. You can eat perfectly all day and still end up in the kitchen at night wondering why you keep doing this. You promise yourself you'll start fresh tomorrow, and I know you mean it every single time. But the cycle, it always finds its way back, especially when you're stressed, when you're overwhelmed, or when you're just tired of being the one that's holding it all together. And I get it because I lived that way for years. And what I learned is this: the problem, it was never about food. It was the pressure underneath it, the perfectionism, the self-doubt, the part of me that never felt safe and secure to just be me. And that's why I created the sober eating sequence. It's a proven 3-phase method that rewires the emotional patterns and the belief systems driving overeating, so you can relax, trust yourself around food, and release weight completely naturally, without force and without obsession. Because when your body feels secure, it lets go. The cravings quiet, the self-punishment, it softens, and food, it stops being the thing that you have to fix. This is not another plan. This isn't another rule book. It's a revolutionary transformation for your nervous system, for your body, and for your identity. So join the sober eating movement today. So Italy, right? Let's talk about my Italy trip and, and what happened, right? Because this was the opposite of a controlled environment. This was not a trip where I had a plan or knew what I was walking into food wise, except for the first night where I knew that I was going to this famous restaurant in Modena. It's a tasting menu. I always forget the name, but if you're listening to this and you know the name, it's Francesco something, and it's in Modena, and it used to be the #1 restaurant in the world. And it's this really luxurious tasting menu. So that was basically the one restaurant I knew that I was going to because we went to Italy a day early in order to go to that restaurant. So I knew that. And that was a beautiful, amazing experience. And again, one of the things that when I was sitting there eating that food and enjoying the wine pairing and the dessert and the multiple, tastings. And, I really was just like, wow, I had a moment of gratitude where I was just like, wow, this is so great that I'm genuinely enjoying it. But for most of the trip, every day looked different, right? We'd wake up, we wouldn't really know where we were eating that day. We'd wander into a town we hadn't planned on and end up at a restaurant that we never heard of because someone pointed us toward it or because I was in a group with people and maybe we thought we were going to go somewhere, but then one person was like, oops, can't eat that, or I don't like this menu. There was always something that made us not have any kind of predictability, right? Lunch sometimes happened at 3 p.m., not at 1 p.m. It was just so different, every day. Dinner was sometimes at 8:30, sometimes we didn't get our food till 10. Some mornings there was so much food around, like there was a full spread of food. We stayed in Rome and, we had this breakfast. I've never seen so much food in my life. And in the past, I remember that would have felt very stressful to me because I would have felt very triggered or compulsive to eat so much of it. But it wasn't like that this time, right? It wasn't like that for me at all. But ultimately, the point being is that there was no routine, there was no real anchor, there was no real way to plan ahead in like a super predictable way. And this not knowing, the inability to like prepare in a way that I could tell myself that I was safe or whatever, that wasn't there, right? And again, like I said, that used to send me into a crazy swing, a crazy spiral. But this time, like I said, it was totally different, right? When lunch showed up at 3 p.m., I ate lunch at 3 p.m., right? Like I ate lunch at 3 p.m. and I led by the ability for me to intuitively know how I should eat that meal, right? And that's something that I teach in, the sober eating sequence as well. It's like you are the one in the driver's seat all the time. So lunch came at 3 p.m. and it doesn't mean that I have to eat the whole lunch. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to eat the lunch. I can decide how this lunch is going to go based off of how in the moment I am feeling, and I'm going to intuitively eat that way. So I was always the one in control, right? When a plate of something arrived and I didn't expect it, right? Whether it was, if it was like this indulgent dessert and it was unplanned, I would taste it, right? I would have it. We'd walk past the gelato place mid-afternoon for no reason. That happened all the time, other than the fact that, we read somewhere that this was like the best gelato place in Italy, or I think we were in Rome at the time. Oh no, we were in Florence at the time. And, I didn't negotiate with myself. I hadn't planned on having gelato at that time, but, I had it because, I wanted it and because I wasn't going to miss out on that experience. This is what it feels like to have a normal relationship with food, right? It just happened, right? I didn't negotiate with myself afterwards for these decisions. I didn't have to process it or make up for it afterwards. I'm not saying that, sometimes I'll be honest, like sometimes I would eat something when maybe I wasn't necessarily like planning for it or whatever it was. And maybe I did feel kind of meh or gross afterwards, but that's fine, right? That just could pass, right? That didn't mean anything. That voice that used to come up in in the story I told you before, right? The pre-healing version of travel, it just doesn't show up anymore, right? It doesn't tell me that I've gone too far, that I've eaten too much, that I have to fix it. Right now, sometimes it just tells me like, you don't feel so great, but it also tells me you're the one in the driver's seat. You're the one in control. You know what to do. And you also know this is going to pass day after day, meal after, meal, unplanned, the irregular meal times, the irregular gelato stops, and the indulgent food. I was just there for it, right? It was just normal. I was present for all of it. I enjoyed it. And I was there and enjoying the people that I was with too. That's the proof. That was the proof that I have healed, right? That was the proof that I have healed. Like, it wasn't like perfect eating, but it was really just navigating and enjoying and feeling good in my body 90% of the time. And the 10% was because I just probably like overdid it. But I was fine with that too. But the proof was that I was able to navigate this unpredictable, uncontrolled, unplanned week, actually 10 days, and was fine with it. And I would wake up every morning and I would put on my clothes and I would feel good in my clothes, right? I like got dressed and I felt good, right? I used to be someone who would wear like workout clothes, or just didn't really like care so much about how I dressed on vacation. But actually, as I've gotten older and especially as I've been more embodied in my healing self and my healed self, I love like getting dressed on vacation, not your like touristy outfit, but like getting dressed. If you haven't seen, if you want to see a little bit more of that, then on my Instagram, I have a whole carousel on my Italy trip, and you could see some of my outfits there. And I really I have a sense of pride, when I wake up and I put on those outfits, and I know the night before I ate something that back in the day I would have felt guilty about, or I would have had a spiral about. And it's just, there's nothing better. There's nothing better, and that's the win. The win isn't that I somehow magically ate perfectly or showed up perfectly to the vacation, but that this is the win, the full presence, the full embodiment of the experience. And so the deeper thing here that I want you to take away from is that how I felt on this vacation wasn't because of decisions that I made at the table, right? At the table during the meals, right? It wasn't this like mantra that I had, or before this, like, this mindset vibe that I had before I ordered, right? It was all the work that came before it. Because when you can get to a place with with yourself and with your nervous system and with your feeling, your authentic feeling of feeling secure and safe within yourself, food and, your food experience and your eating experience stops registering as a threat, right? It just becomes food, right? It's something that can be pleasurable, something that you can enjoy without it also being something that is dangerous and is going to have consequences. It's something that can be part of a moment instead of the thing that hijacks the whole moment, which is what it used to be like for me, right? I have so many women that tell me they like before they're going on a cruise or something, they're so worried about like the breakfasts, right? Because they're so worried that the breakfast is going to hijack the moment. But it's true freedom when you can be a part of the moment and it's great and enjoyable and the food isn't hijacking it. But the only way that you can get there is when you go back to the root of it all, right? When you understand what food and how you relate to food, what it has been doing for you all of this time emotionally, right? What kind of emotional lift it's been doing for you all this time? What has it been regulating? What's the narrative that it is representing about you, right? What feelings is it managing? And then you learn other ways to give yourself those things. So just to bring it full circle, if you are carrying that question, if you are thinking about that question, can I ever actually enjoy food again, right? Can I actually enjoy food like for real and enjoy not just the taste of food, but the whole experience of eating the food? I want to tell you absolutely yes, right? And I'm not telling you this as a concept, as some sort of hope in the future. It's something that I have lived, right? You can absolutely travel, go on vacation and not spiral. You can be in an unpredictable food environment with unknown menus, unplanned meals, no real routine holding you together. And you can just be a person and a human on a trip, right? Fully in it, not micromanaging or negotiating with yourself about anything. But it does not come from a better vacation strategy. It doesn't come from getting yourself into a good place before vacation, right? It doesn't come from creating a buffer in your weight before vacation, right? So you give yourself room to go crazy, right? It comes from doing the work that makes any and all environments feel safe to you before you even get there. It's that you are a safe and secure place for yourself, and you could take that self everywhere and you're still safe, right? The environment is, the environment doesn't really matter. The old version of me would have come home from this trip and immediately started looking for some sort of reset, right? Some way to get back on track, some way to wipe some sort of slate clean. But this version of me, I just came home, had a lot of jet lag, unpacked, called my family, right? Got back into, my morning routine the next day as usual, right? Had a cup of coffee, tried to sleep, just got back to it, right? Took it a little bit easy, right? I didn't get back to my regular workout / yoga routine, I think until 2-3 days later because I was jet lagged, right? I gave myself that permission to get back on my natural circadian rhythm. I didn't want to push myself through anything. Right? And that's really when you know that you're treating yourself well, that you've healed, because you're putting your nervous system first. You're putting what's going to make you feel and be your best first, right? Not the most optimized, objectified version, but truly you. Okay. So thank you so much for listening to the episode today. I'm so happy to share this story with you and for giving me the opportunity to relive my Italy trip and just really laminate and marinate in how joyful it was for me. So thank you so much. And I will see you next time. I'm Alana, and thank you for listening to Emotional Eating Unwrapped.